Hi, everybody. Welcome to week 2 of the semester, or at least week 2 of lectures. I don't know that I have too many administrative things to talk about. If you missed the first week of lectures, go back and have a look. They are there. I think I'll continue. I guess, actually, no, groups. You need to be forming groups. Again, with any luck, I will have created a discussion topic for this that you can sort of, respond, discuss as need be. In courses, there's the manage groups or something to link for you guys. Create your groups in there. That's probably the administrative task or the non-course material task to deal with first. Exercise 1 is due at the end of this week as well. Maybe I'll point that out. Otherwise, I'm going to jump into it. Okay, so we're talking about some CSS basics, or I guess not basics, the CSS things that I think you might miss if I don't point them out. So again, CSS box model. We have this width and margin and padding and stuff. All of these one-dimensional lengths, right? That you have to give, and I want to say a little bit about units for those. So again, I'll refer to the Mozilla reference as it's by far the best one. But let's come back here. There's a couple of categories for these, and none of them are good or bad. Physical units, millimeters, inches, points that are really, get out your ruler. I actually don't know if I have a ruler here. Pixels, which I think we all imagine being screen pixels, aren't. The font relative values, I don't have a ruler, which I will talk a little bit more about in the viewport. There's a few spots where you can give a percent. Somehow the meaning of a percent in CSS is still a bit of a mystery to me one moment to the next. For something like font size, it's fairly obvious. It's a scale, right? 100%, 200% means font twice as big. Width 100% generally seems to mean it's the width of the window, like how much browser window you have, or you want half of it or something. It does depend on the property and what it's controlling, exactly what percent is doing. But what I want to talk about are the lies that these units tell. And the first one, maybe these inch units, and this is, again, if I can keep all of this on screen, this element, I explicitly put a width 1 inch, just style property. So it's 1 inch wide, right? This is the rules. Part of the reason I might like to have a ruler here is I could hold it up to my screen. Of course, you can't see that. I don't have this camera, but I don't think that's 1 inch. And if I come back here to this other presentation of the same material, is that 1 inch? I mean, geez, no, it's really not. On my screen, it's probably more like 1.5 inches. And I will invite you, have a look at this page on your phone, or I guess maybe this hits home better when we are on campus and there's a big projector behind me. And I'll ask you to imagine if I stand up on a ladder and measure the size of this box, is it going to be 1 inch wide? No, because all of this gets scaled. So you can say, I want my thing to be 75 millimeters wide, but that's not how wide it's going to be. There's a whole bunch of scaling factors in between. Pixels, not really pixels. A pixel in CSS, there's all these things in the CSS spec that say how it's supposed to be interpreted by different things. And of course, you have a retina display, or you have a really high resolution display on a phone. We don't expect pixel to mean exactly one of those little squares that lights up on your display. It turns out the sort of correct interpretation is roughly 0.02 degrees viewing angle, right? So if I hold my phone at a kind of whatever a normal viewing angle is for a phone, and if I protractor 0.2 degrees, that's how wide a CSS pixel should be interpreted to be. That's not what I mean by the word pixel. And again, I think you need to be conscious of that lie. Yeah, don't think pixel means pixel, because again, there's a bunch of scaling going on there. It's not to say it's useless, but you have this like translation in your head. So these other units, like, okay, I'm not sure this is, I probably need to take this footnote off the slide. I think, IE 9 or greater is probably a reasonable thing to assume. Maybe it's time to edit that slide. But what those mean, so the VHVW are viewport height and width. So viewport being the like window size, roughly. Like, so I guess my window size as I'm looking at it here includes my whole screen or the whole video that you're looking at. The viewport does not include this stuff at the top, right? Like the tabs and the title bar and stuff. That's the viewport is just this actually main part of the page. It actually contains the what I think of as the web page. So VH is 1% of that height. VW is 1% of that width. So especially if you're sort of arranging menus and stuff on the page, these can be a really helpful thing. Like I want half. Okay, well, half the width of the page is 50 BW, and that's nice and easy to work with. Okay, the length units. Okay, so the font units are the ones I haven't talked about yet. Font relative. So rem, rem, or ch are font relative. Relative, a little newer. EM and EX are also font relative. EM is the font size. Just that, right? It's the calculated font size of this. It's basically the font height. EX is the X height of the font, about half. The height of a lowercase letter, I guess, is the idea. REM is the font size of the root element. So like on a page like this, probably the default font size is like what I'm looking at here in this paragraph, but this heading, an H2 or whatever it is, has a different font size. So if I'm talking about lengths for this element, 1M is different than lengths for this element because the font size is different. The REM root font size is always the same across the page. And again, it's the default font size for the page. 16 pixels or so, again, probably whatever font size I'm looking at here. The reason I like these units, and I tend to use them myself, and I used them last week when I was doing a demo, because that's just what my fingers do, is I like they're very easy to understand, I guess. Like when I say here margin 0.5 M, that's half the font size. And it's half the font size whether or not the font size is this, or it's on a projector, or it's on a phone, or whatever, any kind of visual display of that. The space around the H1 here is about half the font size. That's, again, it's honest, I guess, about what it's saying. It's very obvious as soon as I say font size, it's very obvious to all of us how it's going to deal if you pinch in and out on your phone or whatever else. There's no like translation to be had there. Okay, so those are the basic ideas in HTML. Some basics of positioning. So moving stuff around a page is traditionally at least the hard part. All right, so I have here another example with a little more going on. Wait, what is it? Position.html. Okay, so let's drop that for the moment. Okay, so this is the no CSS version of this page. Sorry, I should do the XML style closing. Okay, so I've linked this. Oh, I haven't, because I'm going to create it from scratch. Okay. Right? Yeah, okay, so I have this image, but yeah, no CSS to start with. What I'm wanting to do here is, I'm just going to look at this image, right? It's as good as anything to sort of want to move around the page. I probably don't want it there. Maybe let's start with the markup that I'm dealing with. I have, 2 sections of a page. I have a heading for each section, which again, this is usually the kind of markup I would produce. And then I have this image. It's a figure. And I could put in here, there's a fig caption element. If I wanted to give this thing a caption where I can say, like, I don't know, happy face. But I have it all wrapped up in this figure element, and that's what I'm going to actually style. Maybe I'll be specific and style only that figure. Of course, I can be more or less precise here. Maybe this. Maybe all figures on my page are going to get whatever treatment here. There's a couple ways to position things on a page. It depends a lot what you're doing. Like, what makes sense is going to depend, of course, on what you're doing. I want to talk about float, just because I find that people tend to think it like sounds harder than it is. Okay, so that's the default arrangement of things. If I do this and I reload the page, so float right is take this thing, move it to the right-hand side of the viewport, and let the other text kind of flow around it as it likes. So maybe I'll delete that caption. I think actually no, what I'm going to do is pull this off. I want the window smaller just so I can see what's going on. That's what I want. Okay. Yeah, so the sort of surrounding text, or the following text, I guess, right? So the paragraph, this next section, all come after the figure. So that text flows around, and once the margin is free, it comes back and takes a full page width. That's easy. Again, if this kind of arrangement of things becomes a one-liner, the CSS position attribute, again, I think when people come across it in a tutorial or whatever, it sounds easier. And especially if you like very carefully arrange the tutorial, it is, but let's not carefully arrange the tutorial. Okay. So when I say position, what I get to do here is just say where the thing goes. I get to move this thing around the page. So I'm going to say I want it to be towards the right-hand side of the page, 1 em away from the window edge, the viewport edge, and I want it to be kind of towards the top. I don't know, I'll leave a little bit of space for my heading, something like that. So this is, again, like 1 em away from the right, 3 em away from the top of the page. Let's see how I did. And this is a problem with positioning, that with float, the sort of browser takes care of the overlap. So I'm not going to get this sort of things stomping over top of my content, and like my caption is completely unreadable there. But still, I have this problem of like that. So it's also very easy, and again, I see beginners do this, again, less so I think in a class like this, but I see it in like Compute 165 with real beginners, where you end up with something like this. You know what, there's still some like, I think, sorry, right. Yeah, let's get rid of both. Yeah, so there's a little margin there in the default style. Like, it's very easy to do something like this and think, good, that's where I want it, great. And forget that, or even if you try it on your phone, like maybe your phone is that wide and it looks cool. But, if you're in landscape mode or whatever, it's very easy to get this overlapping because you didn't try every sort of possible screen width. So yeah, if you're going to position, you got to do it really carefully to not end up in this like having things completely unreadable situation. This is maybe a reason. Okay, so this is a 100 pixel wide image. This is, I think, a really good reason to use pixel measurements, because it's pixels. Like that's what this bitmapped image are made of. So why not? Like again, say what you mean. Maybe something like this, right? So this is, I think, now a coherent thing I've said where basically I've, ooh, not quite, right? Like I guess, again, there's a little bit of margins and paddings and stuff sort of adding up. I do need a little bit more than this to ensure that separation there. I could get some overlap. I think I'll go with it for now, though. So I had to do this, but then, you know, what happens if, I think I'm also in this position. Often we're going to be in the situation where we're writing not pages, but templates. So, you know, you're not writing the original content, you're writing a template, and users who you've possibly never met are going to be filling in the content. They might write a heading that's longer than the one you expected, and you end up with this kind of thing happening. So this, anyway, content can overlap other content as soon as you start positioning stuff around the page. This is my caution that it's maybe not as easy as you'd hope. And I guess, right, I do have a sort of more complete example here of what that can look like, and a little bit of configuration, just because, but again, I have confidence you can write a few lines of code if you want to play with it yourself. There's these 4 values for position. Maybe something like position fixed. So yeah, I guess I just use absolute relative to the viewport. Position fixed is relative to, I guess page itself. Fixed is more relative to the viewport because it doesn't move when scrolling happens. I guess in order for that to work, I need scrolling to be able to happen. Do that. All right. So yeah, position fixed is sort of pin it there, and you know, for something like a menu where you don't want it to move, and you want it to stay on screen as your user scrolls around, that's fine, and they can kind of scroll to read the thing they need to. You know, if used sparingly, sure. Position relative is, of course, like the browser lays out the page. It says, okay, this figure, or, you know, whatever heading, whatever you're talking about, would have been here. So position relative, now I'm allowed to kind of adjust from that position, move it up a little bit, move it down a little bit. Its space is left. So if you need to make some little adjustment, that can make a lot of sense. Something that I think is probably nicely usable now that wasn't in some historic sense is CSS grids. Where's the compatibility table? Oh, this is because this is a guide, not a reference, of course. So what was going on here in the past? Yeah, so Edge 16, like not IE, but Edge 16, like this was the holdout that made grid unusable. I think it's probably usable in the modern world. But maybe keep that in mind. Again, you have to know what level of compatibility you're going to ensure. And then you get to, with grid, you just get to say things like this. Like I want, you know, a 3-column, 2-row layout of things. Here's how my pieces of content go in that grid. And including things like this. Like I want this piece of content to span 2 columns, this to span 2 rows, and okay, these pieces go here. That is, I think, yeah, like it's just closer to what people think about their array, like their page arrangement. So yeah, a little caution on compatibility. But with that said, can I like use my thing? Okay, there we go. Okay, once again, let's do this. Let's get rid of our style sheet. Okay, so with no style sheet, this. I have a certain nostalgia. I've been carrying this page around as an example for ages. But okay, so I've got again a couple sections. Appropriately chosen markup, an unordered list of ingredients, an ordered list of steps, IDs if somebody wants to link. So how do I want all of this to look? Okay, let's start with like my maybe basic page style here before I really start with a grid. Okay, so this is just basic intro CSS kind of work, right? Set the font and set the colors, and if you like it or not, whatever. You don't have to like my style, but okay, basic stuff. Now, what I want, well, again, like I'm heading towards this appearance. So this is a grid where I've got these two things in the top row. In order to make this work, I need everything to line up. I need the height of these things to be the same as the height of this image that's going to sit beside them. So the way that I've done this, I started working in REMs. So again, root element font size, roughly the text size for a paragraph, right? If I don't go around changing anything, it's the height of that highlight, I suppose. Okay, I want a little bit of space here around my heading, just so it's not too cramped on the edges. The font size is 2, right? So twice as big. And I'm kind of mentally counting here, like how much space do I have? I have 1 above, 2 REM of content in, times 1.5 because I want a little extra space. Like if I do end up in a really small thing in that line wraps, how much space do I want there to be between the lines? So I think that's, again, this times this, 3 rems plus the margin top and bottom, none left and right is what I've said there. And then I have this serving suggestion, or I guess serving size, whatever that is. And again, I've kind of very carefully tried to account for the space here. Its font size is going to be 1.5 because of the space below. Again, margin top and bottom. Okay, so what do I have there? I have 1 REM above, but that's going to match there. So I have 3, 4 for the margin below. Margins can overlap each other, so I'm still at 4. The 1 rem bottom margin and the 1 rem top margin below it actually overlap. What did I just say? 4. And 5.5, because again, my actual line height is 1.5 REMs. How'd I do? Yeah, so again, margin and that. So yeah, I had to do all of that like mental arithmetic just to make sure that everything lined up beautifully, and I would have this thing and this thing kind of taking up the same amount of page space, regardless of people's like fonts or page sizes or whatever's going on there. Or again, if I had a longer H1 on the next page I write, I kind of want things to at least look reasonable. Okay. I guess, yeah, my calculations do assume a 1-line heading. Okay, once I have everything sort of taking up the space I need it to take up, everything gets displayed as a grid. So I have 3 columns here. I have column 1 that's sort of as wide as this ingredients thing. Column 3 is as wide as the image up here, this title image. And then column 2 is what you see in between. So like the H1 is taking up columns 1 and 2. The instructions are taking up columns 2 and 3. And they are sort of 3 units and 2 units. So this is this is 3/8 of the page for column 1, 3/8 of the page for column 2, and 2/8 of the page for column 3 is what this is expressing. And then where do all of these things go? The header is in row 1, columns 1 and 2. The figure is in row 1, column 3. Ingredients are in row 2, column 1, and then 2 and 3. Oh, and the footer hanging out down here, that's in row 3, all 3 columns. So that's very nice. And again, I think where you have this thing where like you have this mental idea of how your things on your page should be arranged, this is a really, like, I don't know, naturally expressive way to get that thought out in a way that works in any reasonably modern browser. The other thing that I've done here is make it work in a smaller display. Oh, you know what? I guess before I've talked about Grid here. I haven't talked about Flexbox. Flexbox is this sort of other thing like Grid that you can use to I think reasonably arrange things on your page. I tend to think grids are easier to work with, but you know, to your taste, whatever works for you. Okay, this fact that I don't think any of us disagree with. We all know that you know, my display and your display and my phone and your phone and tablets are all different sized screens, or for that matter, we also know that this or this are perfectly like legal window sizes. Like there's nothing that says I have to have my web browser maximized in my display. I can have any of these window sizes totally fine. You need to make the page work. So responsive design is I guess the term that tends to get applied to this. I think it's a big term for just like make it work in different window sizes, but sure, like if you need a thing to attach to that concept, great, there's a term for it. I think like minimally, and again, I find myself just like begging beginners, unmaximize your web browser. Like try the thing, like are things working okay? And I guess before I do the responsive part of my demo here, the answer is like not really. Like there definitely comes a phone-ish size screen where this starts to look kind of crappy and I'm not happy with it. And certainly at this point where I have to scroll horizontally because these two things are beside each other, and like just the longest word in this thing plus the image at the size I set it just don't fit horizontally across. That sucks, right? Having to scroll horizontally. I think you know, we can have respectful disagreements about some concepts in web development, but having to scroll horizontally sucks. I think we can all agree on that. So I tried different window sizes. Of course, I could also load the thing on my phone. I have a reasonable sense that if I do this and kind of make it look like I think it would look on my phone, or for that matter, again, I can open up the dev tools, click this deal, and have it guess what phone displays are. Then I have some sense that it's going to look like that if it's a challenge to actually get it on your phone while you're testing. So do that. And I guess maybe the first thing I want to say about this is the natural display of web pages is responsive. You know, browsers have a default style sheet and it's going to work, right? Like if I hadn't done anything, if I literally had applied no style sheet to this page, okay, it's not as beautiful, but looks just fine. Like on any window size I want to put it in, it'll be perfectly readable, and I can scroll through it and I can get the information from it. So I guess maybe this is the first thing. If your page doesn't display right on a phone, it's your fault. It's not the browser's fault. It's your style sheet. So let's you know, I guess do what we need to do to make it work. First thing, and I mentioned this last week. Oh, I don't have this on that page. Oh, cool. Thank you, past me, for possibly accidentally giving me an example. I did think that looked funny. Okay, so when I had no style sheet there, if I do the or actually, sorry, with the style sheet, with a style sheet, but not with this. Yeah, this is the version. When I look at this in, again, a phone-ish sized display, if this was actually the size of a phone, I think this would be really hard. Like, I don't think I'm so old that I can't picture what, like, I think that font size is too small. And my theory is actually that I haven't said this. So what the phone browser will do in some circumstances is think, okay, like it really looks like you're trying to display this on a, you know, 800 by 600 display in 1997 or whatever. I'm going to try to make it work because you seem like you're an oldie-timey web developer. This meta tag detail, I mean, I guess it's saying viewport, again, the thing, like how do you want to arrange the main part of the browser window? I want it to be the width of the device and scaled at like 100%. Effectively, what that means is I know what I'm doing. I know that different size windows exist and different size screens exist. I'm gonna deal with it. Is effectively what that's communicating to the web browser. So now, and when I reloaded there, I got this, and it arguably looks worse, but I've got the like scale equals 1. I've got the default font size that I picture being on a phone, much closer to that anyway. I'm like, oh God, my like browser display is not cooperating nice. Okay, yeah, that kind of looks like a phone size font as I would understand it, but it doesn't look awesome because I have done something as a developer, right? Like I have done this grid layout back here and it doesn't look awesome on that small screen. So now I'm going to take control. So these media queries are, you know, on a phone-ish size screen. And again, pixel means that with all those footnotes about what pixel gets interpreted to mean, but this seems to be about phone size. Like if you're a portrait mode phone kind of display, these rules apply. So you can say some really useful stuff here, right? Like, is this what I want to say? I don't think it's what I said back here. Yeah, what I said back here, I think I stand by for this example, which is, you know what, if the screen is that small, don't worry about the image. It's not worth it. So if the screen is small, the image disappears, and then the space that it took up, like I'm going to let the header, the H1 in that I don't know, serving suggestion line, they're going to take up all 3 columns of my grid display. So that's maybe still not perfectly awesome, but it's definitely better. At least I can read things. I'm not scrolling horizontally. I could go in here and say, like, basically I could undo, and in fact, maybe that'd be better. Maybe I just want to just completely undo display grid. Maybe that would be nice. So just, yeah, if we're on sorry, I'm going to still have the figure not display. Yeah, still get rid of the figure, but just forget about all that grid business. That's probably better than the way it would look on a larger display. And if I turn that off, so now again it looks this big until some threshold here where all of a sudden, boop, and I get my phone-ish display. You know, we could argue about where that cutoff is. Maybe that's good. Maybe it should be a little wider, but it's conceptually easy to do. You can also say things like this, like if you're going to be printed, So I guess how do I get that? I guess I can do a print preview. I don't actually have to print it and hold up the piece of paper. So if I do that, and I do I think this works. Yeah. Oh, so I didn't do the grid rearrangement, but again, I can control what prints and what doesn't. My advice to a lot of people, is again, if your style sheet isn't working, if your page isn't working in different circumstances, that was your fault. You did that. You can get pretty far with not much CSS. And again, if I come back to this, did I close that tab? This one. If I have no CSS, okay, it looks like I have no CSS. This is literally what I usually start with. Like if I'm not, inheriting some style from somebody else, I usually go with this. So this is, I don't want to be in a really wide display and have to like read a paragraph and then like go all the way back on like some ultra wide display. So don't let the page be any wider than that. If it's wider than that, kind of horizontally center it, is what I've said there. Reasonable height for the lines in a paragraph. Knock back the contrast a little. I tend to like a sans serif font, but you do you. Tighten up the line height a little bit if you're printing, because I don't want to waste your paper. Like this is, I think we would agree, this is a much more reasonably modern looking page at the cost of an amount of CSS that fits on one slide. You don't need to write thousands of pages of CSS in order to get reasonably looking, reasonably modern pages. Okay, so something I've said a few times here, there's always a browser default style. They're similar but not identical. So like I think the Chrome one here is easier to reinstall in this one file. So these like just basic facts about elements that are on your web page, like paragraphs are blocks, and then there's margins around them. And of course in this, like you'll see kind of quirky CSS here, because of course they can do browser specific things because they know this is specifically for Chrome. Like this is just how the browser knows things like, I don't know, what do we got here? Select elements have some border radius. Well, a lot of stuff about forms, maybe not surprisingly. But yeah, all these basic elements. H3 has this font size. This is why. And I bet if I come over to the Mozilla default, oh right, they're split among a bunch of files. I think html.css is the one I want. What is an H3 font size for them? The same one. I think that was the same, 1.17 EMs. Yeah. So that's the same between Firefox and Chrome and friends. Is it the same in IE? I don't know. I now have to deal with these defaults as a developer. Like I have to. So a couple ways to deal with that. One of them is a reset style sheet. Eric Myers seems to be the most well-known, and it's basically get rid of everything, like every bit of style that might be in that default style sheet, just throw it away. Everything is 100% font size. Everything is marginless and borderless and paddingless. All of just all of the things that might be going on. No. Okay, now it's my job, right? Now I have to say things like H2s are going to have this font size, and here's how much space should be between paragraphs, and EM is italic. Like all of those things are now my responsibility. There's something kind of nice about doing that. Like it is, you really do feel like, okay, now I am in control here, which can be nice. Another alternative here is something like normalize.css, which I think I don't know of any competitor to it, because it seems like the sort of thing you only want to do once. It's basically an attempt to anything that might be a little different. Like if one of those was H3 is 1.17, the other one was like 1.18 or something, it's put everything back to totally the same, because we've done a lot of looking, and okay, maybe different browsers have different things, and with some comment here about why, it's like, okay, let's just make sure H1s have this font size and this margin, and then again, make sure that for forms the font size and the margin are the same, because in some contexts are different in different browsers. I am super glad I don't have to maintain this code, and a new browser comes out and something very subtle changes in the way that buttons get outlined, and then we have to add a line to this file. But they did it. So you can just sort of include this thing. There was, I guess you can npm install it, or there is a include it from some content delivery network, and then include your own style sheet after it, and off you go. That's very, very nice. And like I've said, I've gone back and forth between these approaches. Like, I think if I was starting a new project today, I would probably just include normalize.css and then continue from there. That way I don't have to worry too much about, again, this browser and that browser having different defaults, at least in the CSS sense. Okay, another thing that, again, I find when writing CSS, it's simple, except it's too simple. And I suspect, like, if you've written, more than one style sheet in your life, you've had to do something like this sometime, which is you end up saying like, okay, well, I need a thing that has a certain width. And inside that, there's going to be this that takes up everything but I have 2 ems of margin around somewhere, or I have a 2em little slice of decorative thing beside it. So I need this to be this minus 2em. So you end up, maybe you can leave some comment there. Or you have the corporate brand color that is going to be your highlight color for various things. So you're going to use it across a bunch of different elements. So, okay, well, what if next year the corporate brand color changes because everybody loves a rebranding exercise? You have to search and replace. That sounds like bad code. Like if you have to copy and paste this fact into multiple spots, it's bad code. You don't want to do that. So there are these CSS preprocessors that, well, Sass and Less being the by far the most common ones, that are basically, you write some CSS or almost CSS and it gets processed into really CSS, where you can just do basic things like that. They're just not, or weren't, in CSS. So yeah, this is Sass, where you can basically just define variables like this, right? And just say yeah, the width of the thing is 20 em, and then the width here is this. The thing that you actually meant, this. Or effectively just define a variable like that so you can repeat yourself without repeating yourself. That is just nicer code. Of course, the expense there is, this is not legal CSS. It's almost there, but you need to run it through this processing step before you can send it to the browser. So there has to be some sort of build tool. Why do I need a build tool? I'm just trying to write a style sheet here. Do I really need this extra piece of mechanics in the way that might not work on the new developer's machine? All of these things that can go wrong just so I can define these variables and do this arithmetic? Maybe not. I would like to think about that and decide. And again, I've gone back and forth on this. But I get to reduce repetition. And even the source that produces these pages, these pages that you're looking at for the slides in this course, the style sheet is, I think it's Sass and SCSS. I don't want to find it now, I'm pretty sure, but I've said things like this, where somewhere I've said things like the font is this, but the code font is that. And I believe these are the actual values on these slides, because I'm going to repeat myself. I'm going to have to say this in a couple spots, you know, and I don't want to have to, if I decide, you know, we're going to have a different font next semester, I don't want to have to search and destroy and find everywhere I've said this fact. I want a variable. So I've done something like this. Like, yeah, these slides, there is a CSS preprocessor in the mix before you see it. Again, maybe not. Some of what I just said is a lie. Like, I just said, like, oh, you know, you have to do something like this so you don't have to repeat yourself. CSS Custom Properties, while a little bit new, take care of this, where you can say, yeah, this kind of thing, like this -- main BG color is effectively a variable definition that's happening here. And then I can use the variable value like that. That's, you know, it's half of what I just said I wanted out of a CSS preprocessor. Certainly not the only thing, but again, we have this compatibility problem where, you know, it's edge 15 seems to be that line in the sand where this is usable. Is that okay for your project? I don't know. And then you can do calculations in CSS now. And this is, in some sense, this is better to be done client side, because, you know, 100% minus 30 pixels is going to not be something you can pre-calculate, because you don't know what my 100% is or what my 30 pixels are. So this is definitely something that is better expressed to the client and better handled there. So again, edge 12, IE9, that sounds much more usable, with a couple of footnotes again about which specific features are added when by who. But it seems like calc is usable. Like, I would say calc is pretty usable, which is great, because again, I can't pre-process that because it's going to be different in every web browser. So maybe I don't want maybe I don't want this as much in this current world. So yeah, I do it. Yeah, I'm using SCSS. Sorry, this is my like template for my own slides. So yeah, like, I need to now build CSS. I don't just have CSS. I have to do like this. Okay, so I get to do a minified version while I'm at it. I get to produce, like, you know, get rid of any spaces and line breaks, so just there's less bits to transfer to you when you try to download this. That's cool. Is it worth it? Is it worth having this whole thing? I can't just hit Control-R to reload a page. I have to rebuild and then reload the page. I will leave that up to you. Okay, I think, sorry, as I just watch my time here, I think that's probably a good spot to stop and take a break. I will, so yeah, we'll have about 10 minutes here or so, depending on the YouTube pre-roll times and stuff. Yeah, take a little break here, come back, talk some more about CSS in the next hour. And yeah, I'll have some fun there. See you in a bit.